All right, I've got us at 1 minute after. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off and get started. My name is Adam Scamahorn. I'll be your host today. I am the product director for cloud at Intervision Systems. Been here a little over 12 years and worn a lot of different hats. Joining me, I've got Amanda and David who are going to help out in the chat. So if you've got questions during the session, go ahead and submit them there, and we will have a Q&A here as we wrap at the end of the 30 minutes and address any questions there as well. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and start talking about navigating the multi-cloud maze. All right. So quick agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about what's driving organizations to be multi-cloud, some of the challenges that go along with that, as well as some of the benefits of actually building a strategy to utilize multi-cloud technologies and what that means, and then managing some of those complexities. We'll talk about leveraging services around utilizing the right people and the right processes into a multi-cloud environment, and then share a couple real world use cases with you that might kind of help you see how this has benefited other organizations when it's done properly. So first thing I want to address is what is multi-cloud when we talk about that, because when we say the word cloud these days, almost everyone and everything can get lumped into that category, from collaboration tools to email to lots and lots and lots of SaaS platforms. But when we're talking about multi-cloud here, what we're really addressing is infrastructure as a service and platform as a service. We're really not talking about software as a service. We're really talking about that platform and infrastructure side of things. And many organizations actually become accidentally multi-cloud. This can happen through shadow IT and poor governance, or it can happen with mergers and acquisitions when you bring organizations together and they've had very different cloud strategies. Rather than deliberately adopting a multi-cloud strategy, these organizations have become multi-cloud somewhat unintentionally. And being multi-cloud can increase your management costs. It can make governance a lot more difficult. It can increase your complexity and costs of IT, and it definitely demands a greater skill set. So when we talk about multi-cloud, is it a good thing or a bad thing? And like most things in technology, it really depends. Look at the two statistics we've got here. 98% of enterprises are using or plan to use at least two cloud infrastructure providers, and 31% are using four or more. That's pretty big numbers. So it's important, if you're utilizing multi-cloud, to be intentional. So a well-governed multi-cloud strategy can improve access to a breadth of technology choices and innovative best-of-breed capabilities. So let's define what a multi-cloud strategy is. A multi-cloud strategy is the deliberate use of cloud services from multiple public cloud providers for the same general class of IT solutions or workloads. Many organizations choose to work with multiple cloud providers for a host of different reasons. There's a lot of things driving people this direction, and it's certainly true. There's really no one cloud provider that is the absolute best choice for every application. But for an enterprise organization using cloud services across multiple geographies, finding just one public cloud infrastructure provider to meet all of its needs is going to be a struggle. So for an organization like this, the decision to use a multi-cloud strategy is pretty clear. In fact, the top drivers to a multi-cloud strategy are data sovereignty, where compliance and regulation kind of defines the requirements for a geographical location and access to the data, and cost optimization, where organizations have carefully weighed their options and they've picked the most efficient providers for distinct workloads. Additional motivations we see in abundance are increased agility, the ability to move in and out and minimize, easy for me to say, vendor lock-in, The decision may be driven by a variety of factors, including the availability of performance, data sovereignty, like we talked about, and regulation requirements. But this is one of the best ways that companies have to maintain control and avoid the risks of putting all of your eggs in one basket. Finally, consider that modern applications are by design created in a more modular style than they have been traditionally. With infrastructure as a code principles and containerization capabilities, applications can now span multiple cloud providers and consume services from multiple clouds as each situation may dictate. So jumping straight in from an on-prem solution into a multi-cloud strategy is also not wise. Organizations do need to start slow. It's important to build a roadmap that adopts appropriate cloud provider technologies at an appropriate pace. With a plethora of cloud options and tools and solutions, picking one to meet all of your goals is not really possible. So finding one that's going to meet one goal is kind of the first step. Leveraging all of the technology and capabilities like artificial intelligence, machine learning, data ingestion capabilities, modernizing your applications is a very effective, secure manner. It takes a level of expertise that many traditional IT teams are lacking. Integrating these integration challenges from this start with technology and tools, but they often also expose gaps in staffing and expertise. Ensuring proper governance and compliance with multiple cloud solutions also adds significant complexity. To ensure operational control, enterprises want to unify administration and monitoring of their IT systems. This is easier said than done. The individuals who are responsible for this are going to want to standardize policies and procedures and processes to share the same tools where it's possible across multiple cloud providers. And finally, keeping your security policies consistent across different clouds that don't always implement security in the same ways can also be a significant challenge. Similar to governance and compliance, finding tool sets that provide parity of features across cloud providers is key to building a solid security outcome with a multi-cloud strategy. So when you're starting to think about whether or not this is right for your organization, or you think that maybe it is, there's some key considerations. And these are kind of the three big questions we see organizations ask us or ask themselves at the very beginning. And the first one is really just where we begin. So I would say the first thing you should do is assemble a team and assign stakeholders and assess the goals of that multi-cloud strategy. Before you do anything or build anything, you need to understand the different use cases of the different cloud adoption technology capabilities and define a formal cloud strategy aligned with your IT strategic goals. It's important to evaluate the platforms and the vendors with the use cases that match your strategic goals. But at its core, what you really need to do is assess what your goals are and explore your plan on how you want to achieve them. And then who should be involved? Lots of people in an organization probably should be involved, and lots of people probably want to be involved. But from the top down, you should involve your technology leader. The CIO should provide executive leadership for guidance and strategy and planning. And the application leaders and their team are going to help craft the vision for the future state of the application. The infrastructure and operations teams should be contributing insights about the competencies, requirements, what planning should be involved, and the process for the operational strategy. And then the technical professional team, this would be your cloud architecture and design group, is going to help process the assessments through to the migration and modernization of the workloads and move into a new steady state in their new home. The last question of how is our business going to be impacted? This is kind of an easy one to do if you've done the first two steps right. A well-executed multi-cloud strategy will not only reduce cost and downtime, but it'll find efficiencies in resiliency and performance across the entire business. But in order to make that a reality, it's important to follow each cloud provider's best practices for migration and modernization to get the best results with each portion of the mobilization. You need to formulate a plan to reduce or eliminate downtime during those migration steps. And you want to involve the governance, compliance, and security people in building that plan, communicating that plan, and testing that plan before the actual migration happens, and then work with them as part of the execution of it. Kind of three other key additional best practices I want to call out and actually speak to. And the first is to improve your identity strategy. In order to be resilient and independent of a single point of failure, your identity strategy needs to be multi-cloud capable. Identities become crucial to security operations, user experience, and uptime. And across a hybrid multi-cloud scenario, this can't be more true. This needs to work, and it needs to work across any place your digital footprint exists. Next, you want to maximize resiliency in the cloud solution, but build strategies to leverage alternatives as well across hybrid cloud environments. So keep in mind that a really solid, resilient cloud plan involves two things: high availability as well as backup and disaster recovery. One of these things by itself is not a truly resilient strategy. And the ability to not only be up in an active scenario from a high availability standpoint, but also to be able to recover in a completely different place in the event of a cyber attack or something happens to your production environment where it's completely unavailable, is really important as well for complete resilience. And finally, don't forget about the importance of people. Just like your applications, their skills have to evolve. Individuals who can work on complex solutions across cloud platforms are frankly better compensated than any of their peers. And so compensation and training is really, really key to the important to holding on to these types of people. And building this internally is going to take a lot of training. Organizations leveraging capable project managers, DevOps engineers, and cloud architects that also have access to cloud platform that have effective capabilities across cloud platforms with individual contributors that have specialties that run deep into the tools offered by the individual cloud providers. Many organizations will actually find that it's more efficient to partner with a service provider that can pull from a wider bench based on the need or project as a plan like this moves forward. Because building these teams is such a challenge, it's often important to leverage additional resources, either through something like staff augmentation or outsourcing, or professional and managed services. This allows organizations a more pay-as-you-go cloud-like experience with their needs that extend to people side of this equation, as well as the tools and technology. When partnering with a cloud provider organization, it will simplify your cloud operations needs and allow you to focus on core business objectives, as well as gain access to the expertise you need for support. So with all that said, I'm going to give you a couple examples of success stories and just kind of tell you a little bit about where InterVision's been able to help organizations in their journey. The first one is a retail organization I want to tell you about that was struggling with high load on their e-commerce sites. InterVision's professional services team was able to step in to architect a solution that spanned multiple cloud technologies and allowed scaling and automation to meet their needs during peak demand. They also helped innovate an advanced data analytics system to help analyze buyer data. The outcome was an elimination of downtime with an improved customer experience. Better client data allowed the organization to make more data-informed decisions and increase their overall profitability and projections significantly. Continued support from InterVision to this day ensures their competitiveness and readiness for future changes. Next, I want to tell you a little bit about a financial organization that was struggling with risk management around their payment processing system. They needed to ensure the system was 100% reliable and provide fraud detection and verification capabilities as they scaled out across multiple regions. Intervision's professional services team helped modernize their existing applications and implement new technologies to verify transactions were reliable. The system was available under high load. Additionally, the team provided access to technology and expertise to help meet the compliance demands and reduce risk of fraudulent access. The organization was able to expand their business into new markets with our help and establish themselves as a reliable partner in this industry. Ongoing support and guidance from Intervision ensures their competitiveness and readiness as this group continues to grow and expand into new markets. If you want to see more about how we've helped organizations on their cloud journey, we have some pretty great video testimonials and case studies on our website. So I'd invite you to check that out as well. And if you'd like to learn more about how we can help you take the next step on your journey, we'd love to hear from you. With that, I'll check and see, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, it looks like we have one question. How do organizations balance the need for centralized control with the decentralized nature of multi-cloud environments specifically?
So a lot of that comes down to the tooling that I was talking about. And there are ways to kind of leverage um, certain components of compliance from a unified tool across a decentralized multi-cloud environment. But a lot of that is getting right into what your exact needs are as far as picking the right tool and putting the right components in place. There's also a lot of automation and monitoring that needs to go into each one of those different types of cloud components, depending on how each one handles their own governance and compliance requirements. So I'd say tools are a big part of it, simply, but also the process side and people side is going to play a big part as well, and kind of tying all three of those things together. We've got some pretty great compliance and security experts in our cloud practice that can go deeper and talk about specific requirements from a governance standpoint if we wanted to dive deeper into that. But at a high level, that's what I would say. It looks like there's another question about artificial intelligence. Yeah, so AI and machine learning play an enhance. It says, what does artificial intelligence and machine learning play in enhancing cloud services and optimizing performance? So this is a really broad question. Everybody wants to talk about artificial intelligence. I think it's been a big component of how we're trying to figure out all the best ways to leverage this. As far as enhancing cloud services, the first part of that question, I'd say it really comes down to um, utilizing your data in the absolute best ways. And across all different kinds of organizations, there's fantastic ways to use artificial intelligence and your data to kind of be a game changer. There's a really cool case study video on our website from Registrar. I recommend you check that out. As far as optimizing performance, this one really gets down to the root of what it is you're trying to achieve and what you're doing that needs optimized. So it's that side of that question is going to be harder for me to point you in any one specific direction other than to look at an application and say, let's go figure this out together. Multi-cloud, this is a good one from David. Do you have any customers who use a multi-cloud approach as part of their disaster recovery strategy? Um, yes, to some degree we do. There's some challenges with disaster recovery and multi-cloud depending on how it's implemented, and we've seen where you can do a one-to-many kind of disaster recovery from an on-prem and leverage two different cloud providers, but there's obvious cost associated with that option. But then there's also an in-cloud recovery when you're protecting something in cloud and replicating to another. In doing this from a place where you're just trying to replicate infrastructure as a service, straight machines, it's pretty difficult in multi-cloud. But like I talked about, when we get into containerization and serverless infrastructure as code types options, and we're finding ways to roll in the multi-cloud capabilities with essentially that code deployment side of things, you can really stand up a separate cloud just as kind of a lighthouse account and test by rolling that code out into its own production environment separate from your actual production code rollout and get some pretty great disaster recovery capabilities in that manner. Next question is, can Intervision centralized cybersecurity program for a multi-cloud environment? Absolutely, we can. We've got some great partners that help us there as well. Like I said, there's a people and process thing that goes on top of those tools to make it real effective. But we absolutely do have the ability to put a cybersecurity program in place for a multi-cloud environment. Great questions, everyone. Anyone else?
Yeah, there's one more question that says, could you discuss a case where multi-cloud deployment significantly improved disaster recovery and business continuity for a company?
Gotcha. Yep, that one blended in with the other disaster recovery question and I missed it. From a multi-cloud perspective, improved a disaster recovery scenario. So let me kind of go through my library of disaster recovery actual events. Let's see if I've got a really good story. I can't think of one where an actual disaster was in play with a multi-cloud disaster recovery scenario. Candidly, having an entire cloud provider from one of the big major cloud providers go completely down is a pretty low likelihood. We've seen regional type outages, but I think there's always that risk and concern of, what happens when a vulnerability exists that exists exclusively on one platform or another, or we've seen things like account deletions happening either from user error or something even on the provider side. In those kind of things happen, having a multi-cloud disaster recovery scenario would be key to actually being able to recover. So I think that's a big component of making sure you're 100% resilient. And it's really a matter of balancing the risk versus investment at that point in time as well. Okay? Great question. Anyone else? Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for your time today. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have additional questions, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or reach out to Intervision on our website or through your contacts who invited you here today. Thanks, everyone.